Hello, my name is Paige and I run the workshop Reading Strategies for the Online Classroom. In this recorded workshop, we will be going over the content briefly in about 10 minutes. In the live workshop, we will also be going over class clips and you'll be able to ask questions and I can tailor the workshop based on your needs. But I know that scheduling is difficult, so let's go on and go into the content right away.
Again, this is the workshop Reading Strategies for the Online Classroom. This is a little bit about me, briefly about my background. I have taught brick and mortar for about 5 years, and I've been an online teacher for about a year and a half. I've taught all levels, and I've moved a fair bit. It's possible if you're watching this in the future, some of this information may have changed. This is our content for this recorded workshop. First is assessment, followed by building background knowledge, modeling, error analysis, and the gradual release model. Now, when you think about this content, I put it in order, but it's not really in any particular order. I think about reading as being really nebulous. Like, the hardest part about reading instruction is figuring out where to start. So if you're like, oh my gosh, like where do I start? You're thinking correctly. Reading is a little bit nebulous at times. Now, before we dive in, I want to talk about two huge things when it comes to reading. The first is rigor, and this is having challenging classes, challenging things in the class, challenging tasks that involve critical thinking. This means in the learning environment and instruction that it is challenging but is also supportive and engaging at the same time. So you need the content to be rigorous. You need it to be challenging for the students. We also at the same time want to think about scaffolding. Scaffolding is temporary support that helps students achieve proficiency with a skill or concept. With scaffolding, the support is gradually removed as the student improves. So when you think about scaffolding, think about how we have things up onto the side of a building like scaffolding when you have roofers come and put things on. You don't really want that to stay there. Eventually you want the structure to be able to stand on its own. So when we think about support that we offer to students, we want to think about it the same way. They must be removed gradually. And if you don't take it away piece by piece, you won't know that the structure is sound. So if we take it away too fast, then that's when you might see that, oh, we have a building collapse, or you might see that there's some part of the structure caving in. So remove the supports gradually and allow the students to try and see how they do. We want to do this so the students can be independent and successful because ultimately students are taking our classes not just so they can spend time with us, although they do love doing that. They want to be able to do the skills and be able to speak like a native speaker outside of class, and they want to be able to travel and do so many great things in the future. So removing the supports is going to allow them to be able to do that. We want to check for understanding as we go. We adjust for the individual learner. In this setting, we have one-on-one classes. This is amazing because we can tailor it exactly to their needs. Be prepared to support the student or simplify and extend as necessary. Some checking for understanding strategies are listening, which is an informal strategy. We also have engagement and questioning. You can use all of these strategies and also have a fun and engaging class experience. Now, in the live workshop, I also go through class examples and we discuss them and we talk about other examples that we do in the class. So I highly recommend you check out a live workshop so we can do that together. For reading, you want to think about error analysis. So this means checking the kind of errors your students are making. The first kind of error could be meaning. These are the kind of error where maybe they say crocodile instead of alligator. Now, you want to ask yourself, does it make sense? For meaning errors, the error fits the context of the text. Structure errors, this is like look at me ice cream versus my ice cream. The error uses acceptable English and it might sound right, but it's not quite right. Visual errors, it might look right, it might look similar to another word. So it might have similar letters. So for example, the child pays instead of the child plays. So the error looks similar, so they just omitted that L, but they looked at it and they thought that it was something else. By understanding the type of error the student makes, you're going to be better able to quickly offer feedback and tell them what they need to do to avoid that kind of error in the future. Now, of course, we always want to correct the students, but we want to give some time for them to think through it because if they're able to correct themselves, then they're going to be able to be more successful outside of our classes, which is ultimately what they want. Self-correction is the ability to recognize and correct your own mistakes. Even with fluent readers, sometimes I might say a word that is not exactly what I intended to, and I'm able to fix that. That is my ability to self-correct. Now, self-correction is necessary for literacy and full fluency. Of course, always offer corrections, but give some wait time and see if they can do it. This also goes hand in hand with not interrupting students while they read or speak. This will give them some time to actually process and see if they can make that correction. With building background knowledge, you always want to correct new learning to old learning so it will stick. You want to link to experience, identify timeless universal concepts that your students can relate to. You also want to link old and new topics so you can connect previously learned concepts and topics with new ones, and these connections develop more comprehension and critical thinking. You also want to emphasize vocabulary. Academic vocabulary words take a lot longer to acquire, so academic vocabulary and command terms help the students identify and understand academic language. And if they're able to use academic language, ultimately maybe they want to go to school abroad, maybe they want to be able to be very successful in their English studies. This will help them quite a lot in the future. There's two types of language acquisition. This is tied to the research by Jen Cummins, which is a researcher who did a lot of great work, groundbreaking work in the field of English language acquisition. I highly recommend you check him out. In the live workshop, I also give some resources where you can go through some more research. I like to kind of dive into the research and the why. So in the live workshop, you can discuss the why with me. Now there's BICS, which is basic interpersonal communication skills. This is social language. So it is used in everyday ordinary conversation. So if your student is able to talk with you socially, your student is able to, clearly talk about day-to-day activities. They've mastered social language. This is the first type of language they master. The second type of language is CALP, which is cognitive academic language proficiency. This is academic language which we use in academic discourse. So in the upper levels, they'll use more academic language. This takes a lot longer to develop. In my previous background and experience, I taught students who had some limited or interrupted formal education, so maybe they did not have academic language in their first language, but in this context, our students are not only going to school, they're taking these classes on top of their studies, so this is extracurricular. So they have the background and they're wanting to learn academic language so they can apply it to their studies. Now, just keep this in mind that our students will take longer to go into some of the content in the classes, and that is okay. So do not feel like you're doing something wrong if there is a difference in their ability to talk socially with you in class versus how they're able to discuss the content. That is naturally how language acquisition happens, and that is why we have the structured practice that we do inside of the classes. Now, I want you to think about what background knowledge you've given your students in class. Maybe this was a concept that just was confusing. Maybe it was something that they'd never experienced before. We have these kind of exchanges all the time in classes, and it happens quite naturally. So in the live workshop, I share some examples of me building background knowledge of students, and we also can share about examples that you guys use. So again, come and check out the live workshop for more later. Modeling is crucial. Modeling is an instructional strategy in which the teacher demonstrates a new topic or concept or approach to learning, and the students learn by observing and then ultimately participating in doing. Whenever a teacher demonstrates a concept for the student, that teacher is modeling. We do this all the time. This is that I do, we do, you do thing. You want to make sure that you don't do too much because remember, thinking back to that scaffolding, if you do too much, then the student won't be able to get to that part where they're doing it independently. So we want to think about modeling in the concept of this gradual release model. Feel free to pause and look at this more in detail. This is a little graphic I created. So we have two parallel things here. We have the teacher's responsibility, which should become lesser throughout the time in instruction, and we have the student's responsibility, which should grow. So we have, of course, the focus lesson with modeled instruction. This is where the student is watching. We have shared instruction where you guys, you're teaching the concept, but you're doing it together. That's the we do part. You also have guided practice where the student is being coached with how to do it and you're guiding them through it. And then finally, you want to have them do independent practice. So you want to be sure that they're able to do at least one component independently. If they're not able to, of course, note it in feedback, offer all that support that you can. And if they're not able to do it and it's like early on in the unit, I would not worry. I would worry more if you are seeing that they are not mastering it in an assessment class, for example. So again, you want to make sure that you're gradually releasing responsibility. And do know that as well, this is also an extracurricular kind of lesson they're doing with us. Of course, we want to make sure that they're at the appropriate level, ultimately the parents and the students, they are the ones who choose their level, and the Chinese teachers offer guidance. So if you find, for example, that you're doing a lot and the student is and you have many lessons with the student, you get to an assessment, oh, they didn't get to be able to do it independently, and wow, it's like the end of the unit, feel free to put in a ticket. I always say that I always phrase it as, please watch this class, and this is what I noticed. What do you think? Instead of me directly recommending different placement, because maybe there is some more information that I'm not aware of. Maybe it was just the student had an off day, and maybe I'm just not the best fit for that student. So that's also possible as well. That's also great, is that students are able to pick exactly who fits their needs the best. We will be talking about this more, and I'll also be sharing class clips. So I highly recommend you check out the workshop, and we can discuss this more together later. These are some examples as well with modeling. With really young students, for example, it's really important that you offer concrete physical examples and involve total physical response. Pictorial is when you're drawing pictures or referring to images on the PowerPoint. There's also abstract. This is when you're talking about examples verbally and you're giving examples about academic topics. Again, we can talk more about these examples in the live workshop together. Now, these strategies I like the best are making predictions about the content, thinking aloud, having the student repeat the reading, summarize the reading, and finding the keywords. I have some great class clips of different teachers using these strategies in the classes, and I would love to hear the strategies that you use in class. In the workshop, I will also offer a Q&A sessions where you can ask and answer questions, so I hope that you can come at a later time. Thank you so much for joining me for this recorded workshop. Again, my name is Paige, and this was Reading Strategies for the Online Classroom, and I hope to see you in a live workshop soon. Thank you. Bye.